When Adam arrived at our house, the air shifted. It wasn't anything obvious, no loud announcement, no dramatic entrance, but I felt it in my chest the way you feel the weight of a storm before it breaks. My father opened the door first, his laughter filling the hall. "Daniel, come here. This is Adam. He's staying with us for the summer." I walked down the stairs, slow enough to see him before he saw me. He stood in the doorway, bag over his shoulder, tall and composed, with a kind of confidence that didn't need proving. But when his eyes finally met mine, something unsettled in me. He didn't just glance. He looked, as though I were the reason he had come. "Hi," he said, his voice low, almost casual. I nodded. "Hey." We shook hands. It should have ended there, a polite greeting between two young men forced into proximity by family connections. But he didn't let go right away. His thumb brushed across my knuckle in a way so slight it could have been nothing, or it could have been everything. My breath caught, though I covered it with a quick smile. Dinner was polite enough. Dad asked him about his studies, about life in the city, about his father. Adam answered with easy clarity, though I noticed he didn't look at my dad much. His gaze kept drifting toward me, like gravity had shifted. Every time our eyes met across the table, I had to break the stare first, stabbing at my food just to keep myself grounded. Afterward, Dad excused himself, leaving me to show Adam to the guest room. The space had been freshly prepared. Clean sheets, the window cracked for summer air, a lamp glowing softly on the nightstand. "This okay?" I asked, leaning on the doorframe. Adam stepped inside, dropped his bag onto the bed, and turned to face me. For the first time that evening, his smile faded into something unreadable, something heavier. "It's fine," he said. But then he hesitated, his eyes narrowing slightly, as though he was debating whether to add more. "What?" I asked, caught by the weight of his silence. His voice dropped. "Would it be strange if I stayed in your room tonight?" The question landed between us like a stone in water, ripples spreading through every part of me. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "My room?" "Yes." His tone was steady, not joking, not teasing. His eyes locked on mine with quiet intensity. "I don't want to sleep alone the first night here." My mouth went dry. No one had ever asked me something like that, not a cousin, not a friend, not anyone. It was too bold, too sudden, and yet there was no mockery in his expression, no smirk to suggest he was testing me. He looked serious, almost vulnerable. I should have laughed it off, told him the guest room was perfectly fine. But instead I found myself frozen, his words echoing inside me. There was something in the way he asked, direct but not demanding, that made it impossible to refuse. Sure," I managed, though my voice cracked. His shoulders relaxed, almost imperceptibly, and he gave me that slow, unfolding smile I'd seen earlier. "Thanks." I nodded, stepping back into the hall. "Yeah. No problem." But it was a problem. The moment I turned away, my chest burned with questions I couldn't begin to answer. Why me? Why tonight? Why had he looked at me like that? Back in my room, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. My hands shook, though I told myself it was just nerves, the awkwardness of hosting someone new. Yet deep down I knew better. His request wasn't casual. It wasn't meaningless. When Adam finally walked into my room carrying his pillow, he didn't look uncertain. He didn't even seem curious. He acted as though this was exactly where he was meant to be. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was about to learn what it felt like to have someone see me differently, boldly, unflinchingly, before I'd even learned to see myself that way. The night was only beginning, and already, nothing felt the same. Adam placed his pillow on the side of my bed closest to the wall, moving with quiet certainty, as though the decision had already been made long before he asked me. I stood by my desk, arms folded, pretending to adjust a stack of books that didn't need adjusting. "You sure you're okay with this?" I asked, my voice deliberately casual, though my chest was anything but calm. He looked up from smoothing the blanket. You said yes. It was true, but the weight of my own answer pressed against me now. Before I could find a response, he tugged his t-shirt over his head and tossed it onto the chair. My breath hitched. He didn't flaunt himself, he wasn't showing off. But the unself-consciousness with which he undressed unsettled me. The pale light from the window traced the lines of his shoulders, the quiet strength in his arms. He caught me looking. I turned away too quickly, fumbling with the lamp switch. Relax, Daniel, he said softly, amusement lacing his tone. I am relaxed, I muttered, slipping under the blanket and pressing myself to the far edge of the bed. Adam slid in beside me, his movements steady, unhurried. The mattress dipped under his weight, pulling me subtly toward him. I tried to anchor myself, but the bed was too small and gravity betrayed me. Our arms brushed once, then again, and though I told myself not to notice, my body did. The silence grew heavier with each passing minute. I stared at the ceiling, counting my own breaths, trying to make them sound natural. Then he whispered, "Do you always overthink this much?" I turned my head toward him, startled. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, watching me. "Overthink what?" I asked, defensive. "Everything," he said. "Even this." "This?" I echoed. "Sharing a bed." His tone was calm, deliberate, as though he knew the effect his words had on me. I swallowed, heat rushing into my neck. "It's not normal." He smirked faintly, though there was no cruelty in it. "Depends who you ask." The silence returned, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full of everything neither of us dared to say. I shifted slightly, trying to claim more space, but the mattress betrayed me again, pulling me closer. Our arms pressed, skin to skin. He didn't move away. I told myself it meant nothing. Just proximity. Just bad furniture design. But when he exhaled and his breath skimmed across my temple, I couldn't lie to myself any longer. I was aware of him in every possible way, the rhythm of his breathing, the heat radiating from his body, the faint scent of soap clinging to his skin. "You're tense," he murmured as though reading me. "I'm not," I whispered back, though even I didn't believe it. He shifted, turning slightly onto his side so that we were facing each other in the dark. His eyes caught the faint light spilling through the blinds, and for a moment it felt like we were the only two people in the world. "Daniel," he said quietly, like my name was something precious. My throat tightened. "What?" "Thanks," he said simply, "for letting me stay here tonight." It should have been an ordinary line, but the way he said it, the sincerity, the softness, lodged itself inside me. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I lay there, paralyzed between wanting to move closer and needing to run away. Adam didn't push further. He simply closed his eyes, settling into the space we now shared. But sleep never came for me. I stayed awake, memorizing the sound of his breathing, the closeness of his body, the quiet intimacy of the night. And when the clock struck midnight, I admitted to myself what I'd been resisting since the moment he stepped through our door. This wasn't nothing. It was too close, too deliberate, too consuming to be nothing. And I had no idea what to do with that truth. I woke before Adam. Morning light spilled across my room, drawing pale stripes over the floorboards and across his face. He looked younger in sleep, unguarded, his jaw softened, lips parted slightly as he breathed. For too long I just watched. My hand twitched with the urge to brush the stray strand of hair that had fallen over his forehead, but I caught myself and pulled away. The memory of his body so close, the whisper of his voice the night before, still clung to me like humidity I couldn't shake. When he finally stirred, stretching lazily under the blanket, I rolled onto my back and pretended I'd been awake the whole time. "Morning," he mumbled. "Morning," I replied, staring at the ceiling. He didn't push conversation further. Neither did I. That silence followed us into the kitchen, where my dad had already left for work. I busied myself with the coffee maker, avoiding Adam's gaze as he leaned against the counter. "You always this quiet?" he asked eventually, his tone half playful, half curious. Not always, I muttered. So it's just me then? His words carried a weight I didn't know how to answer. I shrugged, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He took one without breaking eye contact, and for a moment the silence between us wasn't empty. It was sharp, like a held breath. The day dragged on. We spent most of it circling each other like shadows. He wandered the house, familiarizing himself with every corner, while I pretended to read on the couch. But no matter where he went, I felt his presence pressing against me. That evening, the rain came. A summer storm rolled across the sky, thunder rumbling in the distance. My father went to bed early, leaving the house in a hush broken only by the rain against the windows. Adam and I ended up in the living room, sitting across from each other as the storm painted the world outside. "You're hard to figure out," he said suddenly. I blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "You act like I make you nervous," he said, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. "But then you don't look away." I opened my mouth, closed it again. His words were too precise, too accurate. I wanted to deny it, but denial would have sounded like confession. Instead, I asked, "Why did you really want to stay in my room that first night?" The question landed between us like a challenge. His expression shifted, less playful now, more raw. He glanced toward the rain-smeared window, then back at me. "Because silence feels heavier when I'm alone," he said. The honesty in his voice startled me. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't a game. It was truth. I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight, my chest heavy. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw beyond the confidence he carried. I saw someone who didn't want to admit he was lonely. The silence that followed wasn't sharp anymore. It wasn't empty either. It was full of everything unspoken, everything waiting. Adam leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady on mine. "You don't have to get it," he said quietly. "Just don't make me feel stupid for asking." "I'm not," I replied, the words slipping out faster than I meant. "I wouldn't." And I meant it. The storm softened, leaving only the sound of rain trickling against the glass. We sat there for a long time, not speaking, not needing to. Something had shifted. Something neither of us named, but both of us felt. I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew one thing. After tonight, silence would never mean the same thing again. The third night felt heavier before it even began. The storm had cleared, leaving the air sharp and clean, but inside me everything was clouded. I told myself I'd let Adam sleep in the guest room this time, that drawing a line would restore some kind of balance. But when he appeared in my doorway, pillow under his arm, I didn't protest. I didn't even try. He slipped inside, wordless, and set the pillow down like it had already claimed its place. I shifted on the bed, making room for him, though we both knew there was never enough room for two. "Still okay with this?" he asked softly, his voice carrying more weight than the question itself. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." The lamp clicked off, plunging us into the pale glow of moonlight filtering through the blinds. He lay down, close enough that the mattress dipped, tilting me subtly toward him. The familiar gravity returned, that invisible pull I couldn't fight. Minutes passed in silence. His breathing was steady, mine uneven. I kept my hands tucked against my chest, as though restraining them would keep everything else inside me contained. And then it happened. His hand shifted under the blanket, brushing against mine. Just the back of his fingers grazing my skin. I froze. He didn't pull away. Instead, his hand lingered, tentative at first, then still, like he was waiting to see if I'd retreat. I didn't. The air between us thickened, alive with something unspoken. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I could have moved, could have rolled away, could have broken the moment before it deepened. But I didn't. His fingers adjusted slightly, resting fully against mine now. Not interlaced, not bold. Just contact. But it was enough. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but the warmth of his hand spread through me, slow and consuming. It wasn't electric, not like in the movies. It was heavier, deeper, like an anchor dropping inside my chest. Neither of us spoke. The silence stretched on, no longer awkward, no longer sharp. It was intimate, sacred, even. At some point, I shifted ever so slightly closer. Our shoulders brushed. His hand stayed where it was, steady, sure. Time blurred. Maybe it was minutes, maybe it was hours, but that single touch carried through the night like a secret we had both chosen to keep. When sleep finally pulled at me, I realized I wasn't afraid of the silence anymore. I was afraid of what would happen when the silence broke. The next morning, Adam acted as though nothing had happened. He laughed at breakfast, teased me about burning the toast, asked my father about the best hiking trails nearby. His voice was light, his posture easy, but he never once looked directly at me. I matched his performance, though I could still feel the ghost of his hand against mine. Every time I lifted my coffee mug, every time my father spoke, every time Adam laughed too loudly, I remembered. He hadn't said a word about it. Neither had I. But that didn't matter, because the touch had stayed, and no amount of pretending would undo it. By the fourth night, the unspoken truth between us had grown too large to ignore. His hand on mine lingered in my thoughts all day, haunting me like a secret I hadn't chosen but couldn't let go of. Every glance he gave me, every silence we shared, felt louder than words. That evening, my father went to bed early again, leaving Adam and me alone on the porch. The summer air was heavy with the smell of cut grass, and a neighbor's fire crackled faintly somewhere down the street. We sat side by side in the wooden chairs, the quiet stretching like a rope pulled too tight. Adam leaned back, staring up at the stars. His profile was sharp in the dim light, but there was a softness to the way he breathed, like he was waiting for something. "Daniel," he said finally, his voice steady but low. My chest tightened. "Yeah." He turned his head slightly, his eyes catching mine. "What if this isn't just in my head?" The words landed with the weight of a stone, rippling through everything I had tried to keep still. My throat went dry. I forced a laugh, brittle and weak. "What do you mean?" He didn't smile. "I mean, what if this thing between us isn't just me imagining it?" His voice faltered for the first time since he'd arrived. "What if you feel it too?" The night seemed to still around us. The crickets hushed, the breeze slowed. I stared at him, my pulse hammering, every part of me screaming to deny it, to retreat, to protect myself. But I couldn't lie. Not anymore. I swallowed hard. "It doesn't feel like nothing." The silence that followed was suffocating, but not because it was empty, because it was full. Full of the words we'd both been too afraid to say until now. Adam's shoulders dropped, as though he'd been holding his breath for days and had finally let it go. His gaze softened and he leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "You don't know what it's like," he murmured, eyes fixed on the ground. "Walking into a house full of strangers and seeing you, and feeling like maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought." His confession hit deeper than I expected. I wanted to reach for him, to say something that would ease the ache in his voice, but my body stayed frozen in place. Instead, I whispered, "You're not alone." He looked up at me then, his expression raw, unguarded. The distance between us felt unbearable. For a moment, I thought he might reach across the space, might take my hand the way he had in the dark. But he didn't. He stayed where he was, eyes steady on mine, as though he needed me to bridge the gap this time. I didn't move either. But I didn't look away. The porch creaked under the weight of our silence. The night wrapped around us, thick and heavy. And though no touch passed between us, no kiss, no grand gesture, something had broken open. We had spoken it aloud. And now, nothing could ever be the same. The porch felt smaller that night, as though our words had shrunk the space between us. We hadn't touched, not since admitting the truth, but the air hummed with a tension that no silence could hide. Adam shifted in his chair, restless, his knee bouncing slightly. "Do you regret saying it?" he asked suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet. My chest tightened. No, the word slipped out before I had the chance to second-guess it. His shoulders eased, though his eyes stayed on me, unblinking. Then why do we feel like we're still pretending? The question dug under my skin. Because we were pretending that naming this pull between us was enough, that we could keep it suspended in the air like smoke instead of letting it burn us alive. I turned toward him fully. Maybe because we're afraid of what happens if we stop. That earned the faintest flicker of a smile from him. Not smug, not careless, just something tender, cracked open by my honesty. We sat like that for a long time, eyes locked, saying nothing more. My heartbeat filled the silence, heavy and uneven, and I could see the same storm in his chest. When he finally spoke again, it was a whisper. Daniel, what if we don't stop tonight? The question stole my breath. His words weren't a command, not even a suggestion. They were an offering, fragile but daring. I didn't answer. Instead, I stood. My legs felt unsteady, but I stepped closer to him, until I was standing between his knees. He tilted his head back to look at me, his face lit faintly by the porch light, his eyes wide and unguarded. Slowly, I reached down and touched his shoulder. His skin was warm through the thin cotton of his shirt. He didn't flinch. He didn't move at all, just watched me, waiting. Daniel, he murmured again, softer this time, like my name itself was something he wasn't sure he deserved. I lowered myself to sit on the edge of his chair, close enough that my knee brushed his thigh. Every nerve in my body screamed, every instinct wavered between pulling away and pressing closer. And then he leaned in. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just his forehead resting against mine, our breaths mingling in the warm night air. The simplicity of it wrecked me more than anything else could have. I've wanted this since the first night, Adam whispered, his voice rough, trembling at the edges. I shut my eyes. Me too. We stayed like that, pressed forehead to forehead, as though neither of us dared to cross the final distance. My hands slid down to his wrists, feeling his pulse race beneath my touch. He exhaled shakily, and his hands rose to cover mine, holding them in place. The world outside us ceased to exist. The fire down the street, the crickets, even the house behind us. There was only this moment, this impossible closeness. And then, at last, he moved. Barely, hesitantly. His lips brushed the corner of my mouth, featherlight, uncertain. It wasn't a kiss, not really. It was a question. I answered without words. I turned my head the last inch, closing the distance. Our mouths met, tentative at first, then deeper as if the floodgates had burst. His hand slid up to the back of my neck, fingers tangling in my hair. I let out a sound I didn't recognize as mine, part relief, part surrender. When we finally pulled back, gasping, I saw the fear in his eyes, but also something else. Hope. What if we can't take it back? I whispered. Adam shook his head, still close enough that his breath warmed my lips. Then maybe we don't. The words lodged in my chest like a promise. For the first time since he arrived, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was afraid of letting it go. The morning light was cruel. It stripped away the softness of night, leaving nothing to hide behind. I woke with Adam's arm still draped over me, heavy and possessive, and for a long moment I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. My chest ached with a mix of relief and terror. Last night hadn't been an accident. It hadn't been confusion. It had been a choice, one we both made, one we couldn't undo. Adam stirred, his arm tightening around me before he blinked awake. When his eyes met mine, there was no panic, no rush to move away. Instead, he gave a faint, sleepy smile, the kind you give when you've finally stopped fighting something you've wanted all along. Morning, he whispered. I swallowed hard. Morning. For a moment it felt almost normal. Almost. But then reality shoved its way in, the creak of footsteps upstairs, the faint clatter of dishes in the kitchen. My father was awake. The house was no longer ours. I slid out from beneath Adam's arm, sitting up on the edge of the bed. We can't. The words came out sharper than I meant. We can't let anyone see us like this. Adam sat up slowly, watching me, his hair a mess, his shirt twisted. He didn't argue, but the silence between us said enough. He hated it already, the hiding, the shame stitched into every word I spoke. Daniel, he said finally, voice low, I'm not sorry. I froze. Those 3 words dug deeper than anything else. I turned to him, searching his face for regret, but all I saw was quiet conviction. You should be, I muttered, though my voice cracked halfway through. We crossed a line last night. His jaw tightened. We crossed it because we wanted to. Don't pretend otherwise. I looked away, ashamed of how much truth there was in his defiance. Before I could answer, my father's voice echoed from the kitchen. Daniel, Adam, breakfast. My stomach lurched. The timing was a cruel joke. Adam smirked faintly, as though he enjoyed watching me squirm. Guess it's showtime. We moved quickly, straightening clothes, smoothing hair, rehearsing masks we hoped wouldn't crack. But when we entered the kitchen, I could feel the heat of last night pulsing beneath my skin, threatening to betray me. My father sat at the head of the table, mug in hand, his eyes sharper than usual. He didn't smile. He didn't even greet us right away. Instead, he studied us, one then the other, as though measuring something unspoken. You two sleep all right? He asked finally, his tone casual, but his gaze steady. Yeah, I said too quickly. Fine. Adam just nodded, calm as ever, though I noticed the twitch of his fingers on the edge of his plate. The silence stretched. My father's eyes lingered a beat too long, and for a moment I wondered if he could smell it on us. The truth, the betrayal, the reckless heat that still clung to our skin. He finally looked away, sipping his coffee, but the suspicion remained etched into his brow. Breakfast was torture. Every scrape of a fork, every clink of a glass felt magnified. I kept my head down, praying he wouldn't notice the way my hands shook. Adam, on the other hand, was maddeningly composed. He ate slowly, deliberately, even smirked once as though daring me to unravel. When it was over, my father pushed back his chair, stood, and set his mug in the sink. Before leaving the room, he glanced at us one more time. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, not yet, but in warning. And then he left. The moment the door shut behind him, I exhaled shakily. Adam leaned back in his chair, stretching as though the tension hadn't touched him at all. You're playing with fire, I hissed. He grinned faintly. Maybe. But isn't that the point? His recklessness both terrified and thrilled me. He wasn't afraid of the danger, of the consequences that loomed closer with every second. But I was. I could already feel the weight of it pressing down on me, threatening to crush whatever fragile thing we had begun. Still, when he reached across the table and let his fingers brush against mine. Quick, hidden, reckless, I didn't pull away. For all the fear gnawing at me, one truth roared louder than the rest. I didn't want to stop. And that terrified me most of all.